Is government really interested in fixing this or not? Globally, 13% of students go to private school. If you remove the Indian numbers from that statistic, the percentage falls down to 6.
Wow.
Right to Education Act. It was a dysfunctional act from day one. Was enacted in 2009. We're in 2024. In 15 years, not even half the number of states have implemented it. Government is very well funded. Government schools are very well funded. It's only that how important is IQ? Isn't it available on a click of a button? Top schools or colleges around the world, they are banning it. How can you ban a technology? A smart human creates technology and makes ordinary humans compete with it. What is it that you would need to still be successful?
If the children are not getting educated through technology, they are overtly exposed. When they walk into the world with no education but high exposure, they want to snatch. So thank you for taking our time today. This is one session that I've been really looking forward to.
Oh, thank you, Aakash.
It's been a wonderful journey for you to set up pathways and co-founded with your brother. So I want to just go a little behind the scene and understand. Setting up education is a daunting task, especially school. Like, from where did you get the courage कि ये करना है? Like, there are so many other opportunities. Family has always been doing well, and to a new place. So where this whole idea got conceived. So just some background on that.
I'm a big believer on destiny. Sometimes you don't plan things, but they happen, or the destiny navigates you in a particular direction, and then of course you take it over if you want to do it or if you like that particular direction. So it all started in 1999, 2000, and we have been in a mining and manufacturing business, which was between Delhi and Rajasthan, and we used to export to about 52 countries all over. And then I used to live in Udaipur.
You used to live in Udaipur?
Along with my brother,
Okay.
Finished my studies, both I and my brother, we moved to Udaipur to run that business for almost 13 years. 1999, we moved back to Delhi.
Okay.
And the reason was because our kids were too young. And they weren't very good schools in Udaipur. Well, that's not the reason why we got into school education. We just moved back to Delhi and
for their education.
Enrolled them in some good schools in Delhi.
Okay.
And then we thought that now we are in Delhi, so let's look at what we should do, right, to expand something in Delhi. The family has always been in Delhi.
You didn't plan that, while we stay in Delhi, we'll continue to work in Rajasthan, in and out.
No, that we continued in any case. That business kept on running, so that we continued. Okay. But here we thought, let's do something more. We had a piece of land where the first Pathways School or Pathways World School is located. Of course, it wasn't as big as it is today.
Right.
But we thought, let's do something with it. My father was very keen on doing something in hospitality.
In hospitality?
In hospitality.
Okay.
Creating something like a mini India, cultural, artistic sort of a center and everything. With, of course, accommodation.
Of course.
That's how you make money in that, as a business. Hired few consultants, spent about a year on that, but then we realized that we are Jains. And as if we don't serve non-vegetarian, that thing is not going to fly, right? So that was out of the window.
Okay.
Then the next thing was what to do. There's something on that. That's how the idea of K-12 school came to us. It was more opportunistic. Okay. We didn't know anything about school education. We didn't know anything about what kind of curriculums and all exist. But as I said, it's destiny. Sometimes it takes you there.
Right. So was there somebody who sort of conditioned your mind that why don't you look at education? Is there a mentor that you got convinced with, or conversation that really made you think that this is what we should do?
Yeah, I think that's been a very, very interesting journey what we had. As I said, that the idea germinated, let's get into school education, but not knowing anything about it.
Yeah.
Right? So started meeting people, started meeting some educators from K-12 space, then other people from the other walks of life also. At the same time, what we did, and that's a very interesting story, we appointed an architect who had done some very good schools in India, and we told him, while we are doing this, why don't you start planning the building?
Yeah.
Or how the infrastructure would be. We started our research on two very, very basic questions. One was, what's the very purpose of school education?
Mm.
Is it limited to helping a student get that very important number to get into university?
Mm-hmm.
And if that is so, why is it that not all the most meritorious students are most successful in life?
Mm.
And first, we have to define success. Success
Yeah.
not just means the money sitting in your bank account. It's about what kind of a life you're living, right? How contented, how happy you are. And the second was that if you want to create something, uh, family has had a legacy that whichever businesses we have been able to do something new or different. If you want to set up something which in few years starts getting recognized among the better institutions locally, regionally, globally, who do you benchmark yourselves with?
Mm.
So visited a lot of schools in India, overseas, met some great people, great educators, learnt a lot, unlearnt a lot. One day it just struck to us that, these are great places, but these were set up 20, 40, 80 years back.
Not relevant today.
If you're setting up something today, you're setting for the next 20, 40, 80 years, right? So should you be looking into the future or should you be looking into the present or the past, what had happened?
Mm.
And the passion kept building with that. And we were very fortunate to have been able to put together a large, a decent team of advisors who we kept brainstorming. And that's how the whole model of school was evolved.
Mm. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Pathways is always, dare to create a world-class schooling ecosystem, and it has achieved that feat. It's very hard to make people believe to move away from the rote learning, from the rigor that you and I have grown upon, and we've seen success, and we feel that this is the right way to education or schooling. So, how was it, getting your first 100 parents in who would believe in the mission and the vision that you and your family wanted to get upon?
First of all, Pathways is an IB school. You know that,
Yeah.
right? We follow the IB
Yes.
curriculum. And at that time in 2003, we were probably the first IB school in the entire north of India. We were eighth
Entire
in the
north
country.
of
Entire
India.
north of India, eighth in the country. The only school which used to do IB and continues to do IB before us is the American Embassy School, which has a small section of IB students. But that, of course, is a embassy school, not available to Indians. Not that we had thought that we would be setting up an IB school. We didn't even know that something like IB existed on the planet.
Wow.
So how did IB happen? I told you about the research, right? So what it led to is that there has to be a major paradigm shift in how learning happens in a classroom from teaching based to learning based, where student becomes the center of the entire learning, and the teacher becomes a learning facilitator rather than the regular chalk and talk method. And the reason for that is that a kid entering into school today at, say, KG level or a grade 1 level would get into a working life after 20, 22 years from now, right? How can you predict what kind of a world will exist
And who
then?
knows
Who
what
knows?
world will there be?
What kind of jobs would it be?
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, unlike our parents or our grandparents who almost spend their entire lifetime in a single career, now you have individuals who move from career A to B to Z, right? With no connection with each other in the whole lifetime. Your things and priorities also change. So how do you train somebody in everything? It's impossible. Right?
Yeah.
So what it means that you have to train students in learning how to learn, so that they're able to learn each time they want to learn something in their life.
They know how to do it. They're equipped.
We equip them with the skills to be able to do it, right? And that's a major shift in teaching and learning inside a classroom. Because traditionally our schooling has been to bring everybody to conformity. We devised definition of a teacher during that process, which was that we don't consider her to be a good teacher who has answers to all the questions the students ask, but we consider her to be a good teacher who can encourage students to ask such questions of which even she doesn't have an answer, and is frank enough to share with them, hey guys, that's a brilliant question, even I don't know, let's learn it together, let's try to find the answers together. So with that conviction, we first put together the pedagogical model of how we would like the teaching and learning to happen inside the classroom, where the classroom discussions can also be open-ended. and not just one answer to a question. There could be multiple answers. And also you're able to learn from your mistakes. Because that's a big learning in life. All of us know that,
All
right?
of us know that.
Once we did that, then we started looking at different curriculums. Which curriculum would allow us to be a little creative in the classroom to be able to do that? And that's how we found a natural match with IB, or a natural fit with IB. That's how IB happened. And then we had a big problem, because since we were the first one in the country trying to do IB, nobody would make a meaning out of IB beyond intelligence bureau, right?
That was the definition
That
of
was the
IB.
definition of IB, which still is, right?
Yeah.
Intelligence bureau
Yeah,
still
of
exists.
course.
But by that time, we had built a conviction that what we are trying to do is going to be meaningful. And we had a conviction that the society and the community is ready to take that leap now. So it will be hard work for us to educate everybody and tell them what we are trying to do. And let's see. So it was more like a Josh talk that we had at that time, and a passion to do that, which is what just kept on running.
You know, you mentioned a very important thing where, you know, if the teacher doesn't know, let's find out the answer together. You know, it's a significant mind shift even for educators.
Yeah.
Because you may have selected an IB curriculum to be implemented, but an implementation is as good as the implementers. But there weren't any IB trained, IB certified. I mean, there were a few far and wide,
Yeah.
but not many. So how did you create that, you know, the education or educator workforce who would buy into the idea, leave what they're doing for years, which is maybe CBSE, ICSE, or some of the other curriculums, and join your bandwagon and take the risk on their career? That, okay, we believe in this curriculum. It reads well, it sounds good, it's futuristic, but I haven't done it, and I'm pretty comfortable in my job. Why should I take that risk? So how did you convince them?
And there weren't enough proofs of concepts in India, right?
Yeah.
They weren't, yeah. So one thing which I think worked for us was that we realized very early in our days, by the way, all pathway schools have some elaborate infrastructure, but that's more conducive to, I was telling you something about the architect, right?
Yeah, architect.
That we appointed the architect. Yeah. So what happened, 8 to 10 months down, we have a pedagogical model. We know what we want to do.
While you were doing your research, an architect was busy.
And the architect did his design.
Yeah.
And then we sat with both of these things together, and we discovered they don't match. One of the very common mistakes that happens in schools construction is that you put together a very nice building and try to push the curriculum inside it. Whereas the spaces should be conducive to the learning pedagogy that you
It's the other way.
practice.
What you want to teach, the infrastructure has to be like that.
Has to be like that. So we had to scrap all those plans, lost a lot of money. Appointed another set of architects, having given them theme, and that's how the infrastructure was created. In that sense, which I think did work for us. So even if we have quite an elaborate infrastructure, but what we learned early is that it's not the infrastructure that makes school. A great learning can even happen under a tree. What you need is a good guru and a good teacher who's passionate to do that. Having said, the pedagogy that we are talking about, it's not about that the guru is the repository of the entire knowledge universe or the information, right? It's about interaction. So it's more of an attitude than skills. It's more an attitude of being a learner yourself, and how you interact with students. The attention span is very limited for all individuals.
Yeah.
But in a 40-minute or a 60-minute or a 90-minute lesson, how do you make sure that students of mixed abilities or mixed interests sitting in front of you are all engaged?
That's the biggest challenge.
So you just disseminate knowledge doesn't go in, right? So we also did a bit of mistakes. We had some very illustrious teachers, known names, PhDs, masters, pedigree, all that.
Yeah.
And we also had some youngsters, fresh out of college, we also had a few people who wanted to move careers, who probably were successful in whatever they were doing in their professional domain, and out of their love and passion for education wanted to come into teaching. And we put together a robust professional development program within the school from day one, in that sense. And working with these three, the ones who mostly performed the least were the so-called traditional illustrious lot. And the others who were youngsters or who were career switches, they did much, much better. So that gave us the cue that how you
Was it a surprise for you? Or you knew it?
No, I wouldn't say that we knew it, because if somebody has done economics from London School of Economics, right? So even if our school teaching is like that, but London School of Economics is very interactive, very engaging, right?
If they're coming from that,
yeah,
learning culture
or
teaching culture.
Yeah. But then they were so immersed in the traditional system, it was very difficult. You can always give people skills. You can't change people's attitudes, right? Once they grow up in life. So that was what we faced, but somehow it worked for us, and we continue to do that. Professional development is one of the very, very core pillars of all pathway schools.
And what about parents? How did you convince them? Because everybody, who would have knocked on your door, or you would have knocked on their doors, would have gone to the traditional CBSE or ICSE curriculums and done well.
Done well.
And done well. And, the very fact that they're coming to you, they've achieved a significant amount of success in their life, and they are looking for good education for their children. So were you able to convince them to shed away the
It wasn't
overhang?
easy at all. It wasn't easy at all. First of all, as I said, that people didn't know that what IB is, right? Secondly, our location of the first campus was not in the city.
It's slightly away.
Outside. It's slightly away from the city. The brand name as Pathways, and there's a story behind how Pathways name got coined. The brand name Pathways didn't exist. Because of our infrastructure, our resources, our pupil-teacher ratio, where there are a very contained number of students in each classroom, and you have all the resources available, we came at a fee level which was almost 4 times the best school in the city. So how would you get parents to do that? So
while having good options nearby.
Exactly, right. So there we took the route of symposiums, seminars, conferences, articles, not about pathways,
but about education,
about learning, and about learning and how the next century, 21st century, is going to be, and what would be needed for students of today to be successful in that time. And then encouraged or enticed parents to ask some questions about themselves and about their own children, that how and what is happening. Proof of pudding is in the eating.
Right.
So while our academic year starts in July or August, we started with a pre-term session in 2003 in April, only for about 6 weeks.
Okay.
With some 40 odd students, out of whom I think 12 were teachers' children.
Okay.
Because all of them are also there, 40 or 45 students. After these 6 weeks, the word of mouth that spread, when we reopened in July or August, we were 200.
Oh, wow. So you did a pre-launch, not a pre-launch, but a pre-term before the actual July-August term. And your initial kids were your staff kids, teacher kids.
Some of them.
And some of them were from outside. So 40 kids.
40 kids, yeah. And that probably, I think what was happening inside the school was something that people found meaningful or of value. And then the word spread. And that's how it happened. So God has been kind. As I said, I started with saying destiny.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So the very fact that you picked up IB, and the very fact that, you sort of customize it to the Indian culture, society, learning styles, and how the society in India works. So what was that top education gap that you were feeling is significantly existing in the market that you wanted to fill? What was that gap? I mean, is the education in other school not good? I mean, they're good teachers, they're good name, good results, good outcomes, good alumni. All of that was happening. But what is it that was troubling you that, I'm not going to do that because, that's a gap?
No, education, I would say all kinds of education is good. And all kinds of education or boards or curriculum are needed. Society is very, very diverse.
Yeah, everything
and,
has
and
a
very big.
different
And every
client or customer.
Client, there's a need in the society, and there's a space in the society for everybody to
serves
do
that need.
That serves that need. What we, as I said initially, that how do you define success? One more thing that we worked on was, as the technology is improving, increasing, now we are in the AI era, right? How important is IQ? Isn't it available on a click of a button, right? Today, for all of us. Our grandparents used to know tables of 1.5, right?
Yeah.
Before calculators came. Then calculators
Pahade.
came, right? Pahade. Then calculators came. So when technology is available to you for IQ, what is it that you would need to still be successful? One thing which is most neglected is the EQ, the development of EQ in the school, right? We see what all is happening around the society today in a very competitive world, and peer pressures, and with social media and other things. So who does that? Who takes care of maintaining the EQ? Traditionally, it was always said that it takes a village to raise a child, and that's true. But in the modern world, that village has shrunk like anything. The joint family concept is getting over. A nuclear family is both working parents. So school has to provide that village, right? So one was that whole concept, and with that whole concept, what kind of learning you do, that's where we chose IB. Not that we want to do something different just for the sake of it, but the answers to the first two questions that I
You found that IB can answer those questions.
Found that IB can answer that question. It was primarily our pedagogical model that we thought, and we had a conviction that this is what we need to do, and then we found IB as a match.
And they say that IB gives you a framework, whereas we have grown up on syllabuses and curriculums.
Yeah.
So how does a framework help you solve the gap that you're trying to solve? Like, how is IB? What is it in IB that really makes it class apart?
That's a very interesting question. So, Newton's law doesn't change.
Yeah.
Whether you do CBSE, ICSE, IB, Newton's law will remain the same, right?
It remains the same. Even before Newton found it, the law existed.
The law existed, right?
Discovered it.
It's yeah. So how is it different between the different curriculums or different pedagogical frameworks, right? I'll give you an example in history. For example, history for several people in our generation or generations before us was a little boring sort of a subject, unless somebody was really interested. Remembering dates and names and other things, and couldn't be anything more boring than that. You can recall, right? So in IB diploma, which is grade 11 and 12, if a student has taken history at a higher level, the question could be framed in a way that if in World War II, if in that setting you were in the shoes of Adolf Hitler, what would you have done? And how it would have impacted the future of Germany or Europe, right? Now just imagine this question. It requires you to be aware of everything that happened during World War II, so your dates and names are taken care of.
Yeah.
It still is challenging you to think critically. Critical thinking, right? Then it's also challenging you to analyze the impact of what you would be doing. And just imagine the fate of that poor examiner. There's no correct answer. There's no one answer.
Every answer would be different.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of this curriculum. Because what we need in life is critical thinking and problem solving, which are two very, very common terms. But how do you actually practice it inside a classroom? So if you can practice it in a subject like history, in mathematics or sciences, you can do it much better.
Absolutely. So can we say that apart from the academic rigor that the IB brings, it is far more attuned to enable children to solve real-world problems?
Yes. Before that, it enables children to make real world connections
Real world connections.
with what you are studying inside a classroom. Otherwise, it's just theory, right?
Right.
No subject works in isolation in life. If you talk about hydroelectricity, you have geography, physics, and so many other domains working together, right? And the whole cycle. So that's what IB helps students to do, make some real life connections.
So you conceived it, with these thoughts in mind. And, we are in 2024, almost 20 plus years down the line. So the rigor, the passion, the messaging and the pedagogy remains same, or it has gone through evolution?
It's a very interesting question. But before that, let me also tell you one interesting story. When we were raising pathways, I'm talking about 2001. The first school came in 2003, right? And we had conceived to do a school of, with a vision that I just shared about elaborate infrastructure. So it needs funding.
Yeah.
I remember with my father, we walked into the room of the then chairman of one of the nationalized bank, a bank with whom we had been banking for the last 20 years. And as we walked in, he said, Jain Sahab, I've just read the 2-page note of what you're trying to do. आपने एक zero की गलती करी है क्या? These are actually the words of the chairman of that bank. मैं क्या? आप इतने स्कूल में इतने पैसे कैसे लगा सकते हैं बनाने के लिए? और इतनी फीस कौन दे देगा?
He said that.
He said that. हम तो 6 रुपए के स्कूल में पढ़े हैं, आप देखिए हम कहाँ हैं बैंक के चेयरमैन, कौन इतनी फीस दे देगा करने के लिए?
Wow.
But again, there are people who are beyond ordinary who reach that level. So it was about 15, 18 minutes of conversation, and we walked out with an in-principle sanction, from the banker. But very interesting. So a lot of things that we had to pass through. Now coming to your question, what you just asked, that fast forward 2024, so where you are and what you're trying to do. So last year we were celebrating 20 years of pathways, right? We just got thinking that how it all started, which was when we tried to look at the next 5, 10, 15 years. But then it occurred to us last year, those 10, 15 years are over. Now what? If you were considered a little bit as a thought leader, whatever, in your segment, and everybody is now doing that, what more for you? You have a responsibility more than anything else to do that. So the whole of last year in the campus, which has completed 20 years, was questioned as a year of reinvention, where we went back to each process and practice that we have inside the school. And there are some major changes which are happening now to take it to the next level, on the pedagogical side, on the professional development side, on the physical spaces side.
Yeah.
There's a major change which is happening to take us to the next.
So there's a complete
you can't
overhaul.
See the next 15, 20, it's a complete overhaul. It's a lot of investment, both intellectual investment and monetary investment, which is what we are doing. But, schools, we believe in a traditional setting, schools are organizations which would be most prone to complacency. Delivering a same topic year after year to a similar age group, there can't be anything more boring than that.
And
right?
No objection or questioning coming from the other end.
Yeah.
So, you are comfortable.
Yeah.
And there's no need to reinvent or, why move that muscle?
Yeah. So we believe that schools should always be living organisms and evolving organisms. In the last 20 years, we have revised our vision statement thrice.
Interesting.
Because we have to be with the times. See, today we are sitting in times, I think 2024 is almost the verge of that all the students in today's classroom in schools are the ones who were born in 21st century.
Right.
But 99% of the teachers in the classrooms today are the ones who were born in 20th century. Right? The generations have changed. How they consume information is very, very, very different. My day doesn't start before I hold 4 newspapers in my hand. My children, who are more informed than me, they don't even touch a newspaper at all.
But they still get the information as
even more than me.
More, yeah.
So you have to be aware of how the generations are evolving and how you have to continue to keep them engaged and interested.
And as they say, for a child, the first school is home. When you're growing up and you're born, and mother, father, extended family, sibling. They leave, the first foundational learning principles for any child. And then, the schooling starts. But while the schooling is happening, there is a significant amount of impact that the child continues to absorb, like a sponge from the family still. So, how do you ensure that what you teach as part of your education in school is in sync with what's happening in the family, or it impacts the family education culture? Because, if you teach something and it gets unlearned at home or changed, it sets you back.
Yeah.
So, how is there any thought on that in your education planning?
It's a very important aspect of the whole educational journey of any student or any child in that manner. School education can't succeed without a three-way partnership.
Yeah.
Between the student, the school, and the parent. Yeah. And everybody has to be in sync.
Have to play their role.
One thing that we try to assess at the time of admissions, when the admissions happen, that what's your motivation of applying to Pathways school? Is it because it's a good brand name, society, or are you really interested in the process of learning? And if that is so, how much are you willing to also come forth with the school to work in partnership together? I wouldn't say that we are successful all 100% of the time, but at least that's the kind of filter we try to put. And there are several engagement sessions that the school organizes throughout the year, not just once, to keep parents engaged
with the parents
and informed of what the school is doing. In the journey of 20 years, we changed our curriculum once, which wasn't demanded by parents. Parents were very happy with what we were doing in grades 9 and 10, but we changed it to another curriculum, and the reason was because we found value in it. That also entailed a lot of sessions with parents to tell them that why we are trying to do something that we are trying to do, and we are trying to disrupt a system which is working very well and earning good grades for the students. So parental engagement is very, very important.
Very important.
And the schools, like in a traditional setting, can't be fortresses where the parents are afraid of knocking doors of the school or knocking doors of the school principal.
Right.
End of the day, we are a service industry. We're providing service to society. So we have to have that service attitude. And parents should be encouraged to ask questions and to take school
accountable.
Make school accountable for everything that the school is doing. But that keeps us on our toes.
Any story, anecdote that comes to your mind that was mind shifting because a parent asked that question or challenged you on some of your processes or thought process?
But I can't think of a very specific one. But one of the conversation I was having with certain parents, we believe that education is not just academics; it goes much beyond academics.
True.
Right? It's overall personality development. So your co-curricular, your sports, your community engagement, everything is important. So once I was and we have programs ingrained in the timetable for students to engage in all these spheres, including community engagement. So one such conversation I was having with a particular parent on the community engagement initiatives. And through that conversation, what emerged was, okay, when our students are going to a neighborhood government school in a village, right? What is the attitude with which these students go to that school? Are they going to that school with an attitude that, we have come here to assist you or help you? Those guys are self-sufficient. They don't even need you.
Yeah.
It's your own need to make yourself aware of the larger reality that exists beyond your comfortable, protected bubble or zone at home in school, for which you are going. Because if you want to be future leaders, you need to know what exists.
Yeah.
So can you change your mindset and go with that need that we have come here to learn from you? And that's a very big mind shift. Right? So how to inculcate it in classroom? Because students in schools like Pathways also come from little privileged backgrounds. So
yes.
we do have scholarships, but largely it's privileged background. So how to inculcate that notion? So I think with some parental conversation, because it's not that only we are, we know everything.
We
right?
know it all.
Yeah, we know it all. Yeah. It's a very discerning community out there. And large set of our parents are parents who are so well exposed globally, have worked in different countries, have
Yes.
Tested different systems. So it's interesting, enriching with them.
And when did you feel the need to expand? Like, you're serving a community here in Gurgaon, and then you felt that, let's just replicate this model of excellence to other places. So when did that idea come? Was it a need that kept knocking on your door, or you felt that you have a system that must reach others?
First of all, education, even if we do it as a business, education, there should be a motivation to come into education.
Yeah.
That you are getting into a education space, that you're getting into a space where you have to first create value, and then of course everything else can, carry on behind that. You have to create value first and foremost in your own school, but then how you are also trying to spread that value across the community. Larger sense. I'm a strong believer that quality or change starts from top, and then it gradually cascades down in the whole society.
Right.
For expansion, once the first school was fairly set and we were doing okay in finances, we thought let's expand and set up more schools. That was in 2008.
Okay.
We were doing well, but we didn't have money because school was doing well, but there were loans that had to be repaid, right?
Right.
And setting up a school infrastructure of the kind that we have is a major investment that happens, especially in urban cities. So we had two choices: either to wait for a few more years or to dilute ourselves. So we raised private equity in 2000. We tried to raise private equity in 2008, and then subprime crisis happened. So never before private equity was raised in India in a brick and mortar education space. Took us 2 more years, but we were able to raise private equity, and then we set up 2 new campuses, one more in Gurgaon, one more in Noida. Now we are in the stage that we are looking at expanding further and beyond NCR as well. So looking at opportunities of how and where we can make an impact in that sense. In this entire journey, we've always remained very, very open with what we are doing. We very strongly believe education is not about competition, it's about collaboration. There's no competition at all. So we also go and visit schools, certain schools, to learn from what they are doing. And several schools come and visit us. And we give them tours. Some school promoters or school principals have come and spent a week inside the school to see our systems and other things, and which we are very, very open, because we say it's a dual process. In the process, we also will learn something from you.
Absolutely.
So that's how the quality also transcends. And then we engage ourselves with some community schools as well. So that's what we work.
And you've had experience of running a day school and a day boarding.
The first campus that started is both a residential and day school.
Yeah. So what is
it's a very complex.
It's a very different system to nurture.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis a day school.
Yeah.
So why did you take up that challenge? It's a tough challenge.
The initial thought was that let's set up a residential school.
Okay.
And that was the primary motive for us to set up the first campus, which is the Pathways World School Aravali campus. But then we gradually realized that boarding as a concept is not as much in vogue now. It's not going to be as much in vogue in future also. The reason for that is that there was a time when good schools were far and few.
So you had to send your children.
You had to send your children. Now, in every tier 2 and tier 3 cities also, you have some decent level of schooling which is available to you, which is good. By the way, there's no demand and supply gap now. There's more supply than demand in K-12 education. And beyond grade 10 or grade 12, students go for their higher education in any way, outside the city or outside home. The families are becoming smaller. घर में 10-12 बच्चे तो होते नहीं कि 2 को बोर्डिंग भेज दो, 4 यहाँ पढ़ लेंगे, ऐसा भी नहीं होता। एक या दो बच्चे तो अपने पास रखते हैं करने के लिए। So now boarding, of course, is not as much in vogue, but running a residential campus is 10 times more responsible than running a day school campus.
I'm sure.
It's a whole community that lives inside.
And it's 24/7.
It's 24/7. And but that's interesting.
But is the learning different for the child? And is the expectation from the teacher far more deep and more engaged in a residential? I mean, imagine a situation, same student, similar students, day schooling and day boarding, residential. Will the outcome be same?
It depends on individual family setups.
Okay.
I would say not as much on student, but individual family setups.
Well, let's say similar families. Would the outcome be different?
Yeah,
different.
I think the best solution or the best way is something called week boarding.
It's called week boarding.
Week boarding, which is what
I haven't heard this.
We had introduced that in 2003 when for the first time in the country.
Okay.
That Monday through Friday the student is in school.
Okay, and then you go back over the weekend.
Weekend for 2 nights you go back home.
Right.
Then you again come back to the school.
I see.
Now, especially for our kind of modern kind of very busy families where you are quite busy with your travel, with your work, with your social life, and as they say, the quality time. Where do I have time to spend quality time with my kids?
Yeah.
But weekends is something that you can do.
Yeah.
So 5 and the child is in school for those 5 days with a lot of students, with teachers and mentors and everybody. A lot of activities, whether it's sports or anything else. We introduced certain subjects called design and technology, which didn't exist in India in 2003 back then in 2003. Yeah. Quite a few things we did were quite different, and we were sort of little maverick in that sense. And now, as we go back, I don't know whether I'll do that thing again or not. So, for example, the first 2 years, our first campus ran only on generators. We didn't have electricity.
Wow!
Because it was located at a location where there was no grid line. Then we had to lay our own 18-kilometer long grid line to transport electricity to our campus. Today, of course, there are solar panels and everything which are there. There was no telephone connection. Telephones didn't work at that campus. The site was so remote. So the whole construction happened on walkie-talkies. The way it happened. So yeah, and then but with the week boarding, as I was saying, that's a boon for today's families, which works quite well.
Especially if the family is close by.
Yeah.
To accommodate a weekend.
Yeah.
In and out.
Close by means an hour, 2 hours. So even
that's doable.
Not just NCR, but some satellite cities around NCR also. We have a lot of students who are week boarders or fortnight boarders.
Right.
That way they can.
And I think Pathways is not only exhibited a different model of education and has earned the, I would say, respect and command from the parents, but it has also seen significant amount of recognition globally in the international quarters of education. So when did that, the good work that was happening here, so how did, the global market, the international schooling education communities start to know about it? So what was it that you were doing that piqued the interest of people outside?
There are communities in Southeast Asia and countries in Southeast Asia, like South Korea, Thailand, who give a lot of importance to education. And one thing that they miss in their country, even if international schools exist there, is a peer group that speaks English. India has that advantage.
Yeah.
Right? So we identified that as a need and started working in those territories. Then our entire NRI diaspora all over the world, they're doing very successfully placed wherever they are placed. But somewhere there is sometimes a little, is my child aware about India? So create programs even for 2 years, even for 4 years, where such students can come and experience India along with having the same kind of education or the same level of education, which they can then follow up in their country, or whatever they are doing, they can continue that in our school.
Right.
Because IB is standard globally, the curriculum that we do. So if you assess a student in Fiji, or you assess a student in Panama, or you assess a student in New York, and they achieve a particular score in a subject, you can actually say they're absolutely at par. It's a very researched sort of system, the way it works. And because there are schools in more than 120 countries, so the transfer that way is easier. So I think that attracted certain eyeballs. Number one. Number two, IB itself, because it monitors all different schools that are there. And then we are members of Council of International Schools UK. We're accredited by them. We're members of New England Association of Schools and Colleges, Boston, accredited by them.
Right.
And when their evaluators come every 3 to 5 years and see the kind of practices which are happening here, which I'm sure are happening in some other schools also, they also then talk about us.
They talk about it.
Because then peer-to-peer connect that happens. So that's how some recognition in that sense happens.
And obviously, anything that is, happening good in a school environment, a lot has to go to the academic leadership.
Yes.
Because when you're building the vision and providing all kinds of resources and enabling their practices, so the people on the ground, maybe the principal, the directors, and the head of departments, the training heads, and obviously, the team below them. So how hard was it to, first of all, identify a leadership that can replicate, your ideology absolutely to the last person in the chain? And has it been difficult to retain them?
Well, it's not been an easy journey. And it was a very interesting journey in the very first year when we came. And quite a risk-taking journey. That a year before the first school had to start in 2003, we had hired a headmaster for the whole school, a Britisher. And he worked with us for the whole year to launch the school year. I learned a lot from him. And then started recruiting teachers and other people. The school starts in April. Full-time starts in July, after the vacation that I spoke about pre-term. And come September, we had to ask him to leave.
What happened?
In a brand new school with a brand new brand, and all the parents who have taken admission in school not looking at me or my family, looking at him.
That gentleman.
Right? But that gentleman. The reason we had to do that was we were also assessing, what's most important in a school is to build a culture. Setting up a school is not like setting up a retail store that you hire a good place, just do it up, get stuff, get a store manager. You can have hundreds of them running.
Correct.
Creating a school is getting people together and creating a culture, binding them with a common vision, and just go forward. So we were able to realize soon enough that the culture was not building very well in the school.
What were we missing?
The people management skills.
Okay. Is it the non-Indian culture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Little bit of that at that time, which also has been a transition, right? What we were in 2003 and what we are in 2024 is very different as a society and the way the professional environment here is. But whatever it is, we have to create a people's culture in the organization that people feel empowered.
Yeah.
Right? And that's important.
And didn't you feel for a moment that maybe for IB this culture is needed? Maybe we are, overlooking into it. Looking too much into it. Maybe this guy.
As I said, that we had built around us a team of very eminent people, not just educators but others. So
you were sounding off with them.
We were sounding off with them,
and it didn't feel.
I think we came to a conclusion it will do more harm than good if we continue with this gentleman.
Okay.
And the gentleman left, and with him left, more than almost a dozen of some top teachers.
Oh, really?
To a school nearby in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been a very interesting topsy-turvy journey. It's not that everything was hunky-dory.
Yeah. I have seen in education, the teacher leaves, the typically a group, and of course, sometimes students also, go.
I'm saying in a brand new school.
Yeah.
I remember that one day in the morning, 8 o'clock, I am in the school with all the parents having called because there was nobody. So, we had to talk to them.
Yeah.
That what was happening. But thanks to all our parents, they
understood.
believed in us. They continue to believe in us,
Hmm.
and things happen. Yeah.
Amazing. So how has technology played, the role in the school and building your pedagogy and the curriculum, and especially around the IB framework implementation? And where do you see technology going forward, especially with artificial intelligence coming and students finding their answers on their own, and in fact challenging the solutions that the teachers are talking in the class? So where do you start implementing technology and you saw the benefit, and how do you see it now?
So back then, when we started in 2001, 2002, when we were putting together a pedagogical model,
Sorry, are you? I think the
I'm
AC is
good.
on. You okay?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
So when we were putting together the pedagogical model on, there's a difference between IT education and IT enabled learning.
Mhm.
Right. So, and because the pedagogy that we were trying to implement was more inquiry based, where the students themselves become curious and ask questions,
Right.
so they have to do research from a very young age. How do they do it? The main source is internet.
Yeah.
Apart from the library, right? In 2003, our campus was probably one of the first campuses in the world, school campuses in the world, which was both internally and externally had complete Wi-Fi connectivity. I'm talking about that time that when devices didn't used to come Wi-Fi friendly at all.
Right.
So we had to import PCMCI cards like as big as a visiting card from Singapore and give it to each student to insert in their devices,
laptop or device,
to connect with the internet.
Wow.
We won the best IT user award from NASSCOM in education in 2005
for doing that.
For the whole
Whole set
overall
of initiatives.
the IT vision that we had in that sense, where we were using it as a tool
Okay.
To do that, and that continues to happen. So technology is an enabler, and technology is something which has to be embraced. It has certain ills also, but that again is a responsibility of a school, that how do you inculcate digital citizenship in today's young people? How to be a good digital citizen of what you should do and what you should not be doing. And I think that's a responsibility of the school along with the parents to keep teaching the students. Technology has grown and will only grow.
Yeah.
Disrupt is not a right word in that connotation, but as we say, that it keeps disrupting. When AI came, when the generative or large language model came a couple of years back, right? We started reading news articles from some top schools or colleges around the world that they are banning it inside there. We were just questioning ourselves, how can you ban a technology?
Yeah.
Did you ever ban a calculator?
Yeah.
When it came?
And more so when you suppress something, it sort of...
Yeah. A human creates a technology. A smart human creates technology and makes ordinary humans compete with it.
Correct.
Right? So what schools need to do is, schools need to inculcate those even higher order skills in students to become even more smarter. If there's something which is of repetitive nature or which is of research nature, which a tool can do much better than a human brain, why do I spend my time in that? Let the tool do that and let me develop on that, right? For example, as Professor Sugata Mitra says, give an assignment in a class and tell students, use ChatGPT to do it. Tell them to do an essay and tell them to use ChatGPT to do it.
Okay.
And they come back with that assignment, and then tell them, now improve upon it. So that's when you're using high order thinking skills, right?
The basic has been done.
Basic has been done. Now improve upon it. When you and I, when we grew up, we had books to refer to.
Yeah, that's about it.
So at least somebody had vetted that book before it got published. Today, when you do search on a search engine, the kind of information that's thrown at you, who has vetted that information?
No one.
So how do you make out what is correct, what is incorrect? These are the skills which are required to be successful, not just the knowledge of what is there. prompt engineering, which is becoming a big career.
buzzword and very
one of my
after.
friends, you also know him, one of our fellow IPers. He told me a very interesting thing last year. What he did.
Yeah.
So he acquired a company in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a company in India. So he had to do a contract.
Okay.
A contract, a legal contract between these two companies. So he had a top grade law firm in India and a top grade law firm in Europe to do that. He thought of doing something different.
Okay.
What he did, he sat with ChatGPT.
Okay.
And drafted a whole contract.
Okay.
Through ChatGPT without using any of these lawyers, right?
Okay.
And then what he did, he gave that contract to the European firm, telling them that the Indian folks are suggesting this contract, just
vet it.
Opine on this, vet this. Few cosmetic changes here and there, this is fine. He did the same thing with the Indian folks. They also said it's fine. I asked him that, how were you able to do that? He said it was only about I kept improving it till the time I got the right thing, that I asked the right questions to the engine or do the right prompts so that I'd get the right responses. Just imagine a very complex legal contract between two countries where laws of this country, laws of that country, international laws, all are involved. If that complex an agreement can be done by technology, by you spending a few hours in your office or home, why do you need such lawyers? Right? Or the lawyers have to do better things over it in that sense. So that's what we are fighting with technology today. It's not a fight. It's about how do we embrace it and how we make ourselves even more smarter.
So will it make professions like law or similar consulting professions questionable in future? I mean, because if technology can solve for it with the help of deeper prompting, then why do your LLBs and LLMs when you can focus more on setting up an enterprise, and these things can be sorted by large language models?
Well, I think little differently.
Okay.
I think little differently that yes, some mundane repetitive jobs, they will always have a risk of whether they will continue or not. For example, checking in for a flight, right?
Yeah.
And even, but if we talk specific about lawyers, there would still be certain complex things with ChatGPT or
Or
AI
maybe
would
lawyers
not be
need
able
to go deeper in their game.
Absolutely.
Beyond the contracts.
Absolutely.
And then find out, more on the policy and the implementation and interpretation.
Yeah.
Rather than, doing the clauses.
For example, about the contract. If it's a commercial contract, one is the legality of it. Second is the commercial interest. Now, I don't know whether the large language model will be able to take care of both. But maybe if the lawyer brings that, keeps that commercial interest also while doing the entire thing, that could be a value add of what Dr. Saurabh Mitra said, that let it throw you, come out with something, then improve upon it. Yeah. Makes life easier.
Yeah. And do you feel that, India as a large population base, can it become the source for, educators for the world? Do you think that India is still living in the colonial education system or impact, or has it come off the edge and can create its own education frameworks and system that can benefit its population and that can be the engine for the world? Can Indian institutions, schools, and educators dare to dream something like this?
Smart people
as of now, we've always been looking at the West. What is the innovation? Please give it to us. We borrow it and we implement, or we pack our bags and go to the world there and get educated there.
Yeah. Well, so for example, today can we imagine the US or the UK university system to exist and run as efficiently without Indian professors? The answer is no, right? You don't. What is it that they are attracted there and they're not able to scale success in India or even in technology? We see our Indians doing so well in Silicon Valley and not here. Because traditionally, I think we had gone through a curve where everybody was only working for making ends meet. I think now we are gradually reaching a stage. Very soon a tipping point will come where we'll start having things happening in India itself. Because what we have to do is we have to create an ecosystem. By the way, I'm also involved a little bit in the policy, education policy with the government. We keep working some interesting thing with the government for the last several years. The National Education Policy 2020 as it comes. If you read the document, it's a beautiful document. It's a very aspirational document. I'm sure you also have read it, right? Any policy is as good as its implementation.
True.
Otherwise, it becomes a very decorative thing lying somewhere. And that's where we as a country have to work on this. One thing all of us, and especially the policymakers and the people in power, or the people who can get things done, need to really, really realize is, or question themselves, are you really an expert in education or you're not? You know, education is something you ask anybody in the world, everybody would say, this is most closest to my heart.
Yeah.
Everybody says education is most closest to my heart, which means everybody has an opinion about it.
Correct.
But are you an expert about it also or not?
You may be a consumer, but not expert.
Not an expert, right? And that's where the problem happens. A lot of boardroom policies happen, thinking कि बड़ा अच्छा हो जाएगा, ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा, but when you put them on ground, they fail. One classic example is the comprehensive and continuous evaluation. What CBSE had come out. What a beautiful system it had come out with. But no preparation, no teacher training, fell apart, right? But now I see as a country, we gradually with more new age schools, new age institutions coming up, a lot of educators. We still have time, but very soon India, and Prime Minister also has said that we have to become the Vishwa Guru, right?
Yeah.
So for that Vishwa Guru, we have to prepare ourselves to play that role.
True.
So I clearly see that happening in future. I clearly see that happening in future in India. It's already happening outside India by Indians.
Correct.
You know, when we were doing research about pathways in 2001, 2002, I was on a flight between two European countries, and that day coincided with one of the national days of India.
Okay.
So there was an India-centric article, I think in New York Times or which newspaper, I don't remember. And the headline of the article, or the title was, 20 years from now, it will be Indians who will be ruling the world, but not India. Isn't that
a very loaded statement?
Loaded statement. But just see, what we take a lot of pride in is, you know, so many CEOs or corporations or companies or organizations being led by Indians.
And why do you think that is? Why can't India as a unit not shine, but Indians as individuals, contributors, shine more than anyone in the world?
So tell me, you're an entrepreneur yourself, right? When we say Indian entrepreneurs have done so well outside India, why aren't they able to do that same success in India? Isn't it correct, Aakash, that 40-50% of our time goes in fixing things that should have been there by default?
Yeah.
The laws in this country, unfortunately, are made for the dishonest. They're not made for the honest.
Right.
What is the percentage or number of people who are dishonest? Very little.
Very little.
But because of them, you squeeze all the other honest people. So we all go only into compliances. The day this country starts writing laws for the honest and not for the dishonest, you will unleash the human capital that we have. Why do we have to only be conforming to this regulation, that compliance?
So what is stopping India from changing this mindset, or the Indian bureaucracy or the policymakers?
The level of, I think there's still an element of distrust. I don't know why profit is a bad word in India. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I mean, they're seen as, someone who's stealing rather than who's
contributing to the society.
Contributing and creating value.
Yeah. Our political system, our populist democracy, our biggest strength, which is our democracy, is becoming our biggest liability also. That's what I feel.
Right.
You know, a multi-party democracy and everybody having different agendas and things to do. It takes generations to change this. We already have seen one level of change from the last 15-20 years to what is happening now. Let's hope it will happen. Expecting that somebody somewhere is sitting who will fix that change is not going to happen. Those people are us only. We only have to work.
Right.
That also prompted us to start something in the educational advocacy platform, and we incubated something called ARISE, Alliance for Reimagining School Education.
Which is now independent.
Yeah, which is now independent, yeah. Under the aegis of FICCI, to engage with the government. I'll give you a statistic. Globally, about 13% of students go to private schools. If you remove the Indian numbers from that statistic, the percentage falls down to 6.
Wow.
Because in India, almost half the school-going students go to private schools, which is unlike most of the countries globally, right? And everybody aspires to send their kids to private schools.
Yeah.
Because we're a
feel
educationally aspirational society, which is good, which is a good thing. I think one of the major household expense also goes towards education.
Correct.
While on one hand, everybody prefers private schools, but on the other hand, there has been a level of distrust. Fee increase, schools policies, and other things. So why that mistrust? You can't even imagine the number of court cases between schools and the government in various courts all over India, which are there.
True.
So that germinated an idea in us. Let's create a platform where we can engage with the government on a proactive basis rather than going to a court. Government also doesn't want to do bad, wrong things, right? Have a dialogue, and give them ideas.
Hear us out.
Hear us out, and then
hear the merit in.
Hear the merit in, and it has worked. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost, you have to take away that distrust. So it needs a lot of patience, but so far it has worked. And now in ARISE, we have members who have schools across, I think, 23, 24 states in India.
It's a full representation of the community.
Full representation, yeah. And with that, let's hope a change will happen. We only have to drive it.
Absolutely. And around policy for education, is it difficult to follow up because the bureaucracy changes, the leadership and the politicians, the ministry changes every 4 or 5 years. So how do you keep track of the momentous effort that you put with an individual? And and we have all seen it's to the person, who feels for it and takes the charge, and that yes, I want to make this change with you, and it makes sense. And then you go back and the person is no more there, and you have to again set up a new record. So do you think there is a deeper, better way to accelerate the policy reforms that ARISE or you individually have been propagandizing about?
It will not happen till the time the government realizes one thing at both the central level and the state level. School education is even more complex than higher education.
True.
And school education is a concurrent subject. So you have to work with 40 different regulators, right? Because every state has its own laws in that sense. School education is one thing where you do any policy. The impact is seen only with a lag. You don't implement something today. Right to Education Act, the only major central act around school education, was enacted in 2009.
Right.
We're in 2024, 15 years, right? In 15 years, not even half the number of states have implemented it. And even those half number of states that had implemented Right to Education Act have tweaked it like anything over the years, because it was a dysfunctional act from day one.
Right. Why do you call it dysfunctional? What was missing?
So, okay, what did Right to Education Act do or say? It said that, every child has a right to get into school.
Get education, yeah.
And provide a school at the doorstep. So every, I think, 3 kilometers a primary school, every 5 kilometers a secondary school. You travel around India, go to the remotest of the places. In a remotest village, you will find one little infrastructure with well painted, which is a school building. Normally, all of us see that. What's happening inside? You have, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of schools are there in India where the student population is less than 50 or 10 or 100 across 5 grades or 8 grades or 12 grades, what they are doing.
Yeah.
What has it done?
And with one teacher probably, or two max.
It can't afford, right?
Yeah.
It can't afford. And so it's not done. We have created a lot of infrastructure. We have distributed our resources so thin and wide, so far and wide, with not enough resources. And the students learn also with each other. You need at least a cohort of students to learn, right? So our recommendation with the government has been that instead of doing this, why don't you create model schools and provide transport facilities in a radius of 25 kilometers, a free transport facility. So at least that
collate it all together in one place.
Yeah, so that school equipped with the right, number of teachers, right qualification of teachers, technology platforms, and everything, and make that as a model school. But then the local nuances, local politics, they take over. I sometimes feel, is government really interested in fixing this or not? By the way, I don't know if you know or not, in most of the states, the biggest budget, the lion's share of the budget goes for school education.
Wow, in all states?
In most of the states.
Most of the states.
In Arise, only we were interacting with one of the education ministers in one of the states, and he said that you go to so many states, give us some suggestion that the total salary budget of the state is some 1,40,000 crores per annum for the entire government machinery.
Right.
Out of this, 62,000 crores goes only for school education teachers.
Wow.
So just imagine the quantum of
the theoretical emphasis
involved.
on education is.
So we don't have a paucity of funds.
Yeah.
We have huge funds. Government is very well funded. Government schools are very well funded. It's only that but that's not a problem that we can fix in that sense. We can just interact with them, because we don't know whether there's some vested interests, some non-vested interests, and things.
So that problem not getting fixed, does it impact, not you, but schools like Pathways?
So first of all, I think it impacts all of us as citizens of this country.
Yeah.
Why? Because no country can become a great nation without a robust, strong state school education system.
And that has always been my, question, that, if the children are not getting educated, but through technology they are overtly exposed, and when they walk into the world with no education but high exposure, they want to snatch.
Absolutely.
And are we looking at, isn't educating this country a far more serious problem to solve than any other problem that there is?
Far more serious and far more urgent problem.
Far more urgent.
And that's what we have been saying, because as I said, any impact comes with a lag. By the time you discover in your own way that this policy hasn't worked, 1 or 2 generations have gone through the school system, the school cycle, right? So you're wasting generations after generations. And your question, what you started with, that isn't it difficult to deal with policymakers when there are so frequent changes? That's the biggest problem.
That's the biggest problem.
And that's why I said, you need a lot of patience. You convince a guy, it takes 6 months to convince, or 9 months, then either the election comes, or the guy gets transferred, or the minister changes.
I think in your succession trust, you'll have to really write and pass on this also, keep fighting.
Exactly.
So maybe, I think it's going to take many decades, and obviously, persistent effort. But no, you've seen the journey as an educator, as an entrepreneur within the education ecosystem. There are a lot of, budding educators, people who are thinking of schooling as a way to impact the society. Any message that you want to share with them or guide them with, that they should keep in mind, given where we are in 2024, and given India is becoming a rising force? So what would that message be?
Which is a very enriching field to be in, as long as you come in with the right reasons. Be very aware. Over the last 20 years, a lot of investment has come in school education, which is opportunistic, because there has been a demand and supply gap.
Right.
So the focus has been on profit, not on quality.
Mm.
I'm not saying for everybody, but that's also been, I'm sure
There
you
is a
also would
large
agree with me.
section
There's a
that
large section which
works like that.
Whereas if you see, and this, for the youngsters of today need to know this, who want to get into this. If you talk about the biggest corporations of the world today, technology companies,
Yeah.
none of that company, which are now the top companies of the world, were germinated to become the top companies of the world. They started in a garage to solve a real problem, to make a human life easy, or to add some value in one process or something that we were doing, right? So education as a business is one where you have to first create value.
Correct.
And think that you're coming here for value. Everything else will follow. There's no other, at least I feel, there is no other area of work which can give you as much gratitude or gratifying feeling as this gives. I'm at going to the airport, somebody walks up to you that you don't know, and somebody just walks up to you and says, hey, I'd seen you in the school event, or I'd seen you there, and thank you so much. My son now is in this university, or I've seen this change or that change. You don't need any more a reward than that.
Yeah.
Everything else. So remain focused, but also keep improving, keep changing, and keep challenging the status quo. That's something I love about that company, Apple.
Yeah. They keep breaking themselves and reinventing.
iPod was the product that brought them back in 2001, and they only killed iPod with a better product, right? But let's hope they continue to do that. Now, Norman is saying some other things, but that's what we have to keep reinventing ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was lovely talking to you, and I hope people who are listening, they are motivated, inspired, and would take clues to, imbibe in their education journeys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aakash. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.